The movie starts with a man who is in prison and he has tattoos all over his body. His name is Katie and he has a lot of books related to law. We see that a guard comes and takes Katie away because his sentence by the court has been completed. He has come out of jail after 15 years and we see a financial lawyer named Sam. He lives with his wife named Lee and his daughter named Donnie. They also have a dog which his wife loves very much. The family goes to watch a movie on the same night and Katie is sitting right in front of them. He is laughing like a maniac and smoking. Sam tries to stop him, but he doesn't listen to him and completely ignores him. After getting ignored, he moves to another seat with his family and after watching the movie, they go to an ice cream store to buy some ice cream. When he goes to pay for the ice cream, he is told that someone has already paid for him. He is surprised and goes to see who the person is. He sees Katie sitting in the car. Sam, the next day, tells his colleague about the affair for some time, but doesn't tell her the reason. She thinks that he is doing this because of his wife. When he is about to go home after that, he sits in his car and when he is about to start the car, Katie comes there. He takes away Sam's keys and Sam refuses to remember him. Katie tells him the name of the person and also that he was in jail for 15 years only. Sam remembered him when he saw him in the movie theater and he just pretended he didn't remember. Katie tells him that this is another coincidence because they live in a small city. He mentions that Sam will know what blood really means now. Sam asks what he meant, but Katie walks away without mentioning anything. At night, Sam's wife wakes up because of some noise and she sees that someone is sitting on the wall of their compound. She doesn't know who the man is as she cannot clearly see his face. She wakes her husband up and he doesn't see the face of the man as he is already leaving. After looking at the shadow, Sam recognizes the person and he is no one else but Katie. He goes outside with his wife to check, but no one's there. Sam's wife asks him about the person and he tells his wife that the name of the person is Katie. He fought Katie's case 15 years ago, but he lost the case. He further mentions that Katie was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment. He tells his wife that Katie was jailed for beating people up and also that he remembers nothing else. He doesn't remember because it has been more than 15 years since he fought Katie's case. The very next day he warns his wife to be more cautious and aware. Sam tells his senior that Katie was making his life miserable as he was after them. Sam also tells him what happened 15 years back. He also mentioned that he fought the case when he was a government lawyer. 15 years beach Katie's case came to him in which he brutally tortured and beat a girl. Katie also raped the girl and a reporter told him that the girl had sexual relationships with a lot of other men as well. In this report, Katie could have been released easily, but Sam hid the report. This was one of the major reasons why Katie was sentenced to imprisonment for this long. His senior asks him whether it was his personal interest or not, to which he denies. He tells him that the girl was brutally beaten up and she was only 16 years old. Her face was completely destroyed and she couldn't even be looked at. He also mentions that if he would have thought of law and enforcement, hundreds of other men like Katie would have moved freely in the city and destroyed the lives of other people. He is asked whether anyone else knew about the report, to which Sam mentions that no one knew. When on the other hand, he is wandering on the road, Katie comes there with his car. Sam asks him why he was following him as he remained his lawyer. Katie tells him that all of those 15 years he studied in jail. He studied law as much as a qualified government lawyer could. Sam offers him $10,000 to leave him and his family alone. Katie mentions that if he would give him $50,000, that would be less than $10 for one day. He tells Sam that he was gang raped in the jail, his wife left him and his daughter was told that he is dead. His life was destroyed and he cannot bring back anything. He asks him to bring back those 15 years he spent in jail. When Sam cannot answer anything to that, Katie leaves. Hey there, you. How about subscribing to the channel if you are still enjoying the video? Press the bell icon and become a part of the cool squad. The very next day, when Sam is working in his office, he gets a call from his wife who calls him home as soon as possible. Sam thinks that it is another surprise, but he goes to his house with a weird face. His wife tells him that their dog was suddenly ill and when she called the doctor, she was told that someone poisoned the dog. Their dog dies afterward and because of that, Sam files a report against Katie as he thinks it was his work. The police capture Katie, but they can find no evidence against him and they have to release him. Katie goes to meet Sam's colleague. She is his ex-girlfriend too. Candy talks to her and she finds him sweet. Katie manages to ask everything about her and Sam's relationship. She gets drunk a lot and because of that, Katie grabs the opportunity and rapes the girl too. He beats her as well and when Sam comes to know about it, he goes to meet her in the hospital and now she is in a very bad condition. He asks her to file a case against Katie, but she refuses him because she is a lawyer as well and she also knows what type of questions are asked in a rape case. She doesn't want anyone else than Sam to know that she was raped and beaten up by someone this brutally. Sam feels sorry for her and he gets home locking everything because he is now terrified of Katie. He thinks that Katie might rape his wife too. He goes to a private detective and asks him to watch out for Katie. A little while after he calls his ex-girlfriend where they talk a lot about their relationship. His wife is listening to him and she comes to know that Sam was having an affair. They argue and fight each other over the matter and because of that, we come to know that Sam had a lot of affairs before too. He tells his wife that this was the whole plan of Katie. He mentions that Katie wants him to get separated from his wife. He cleverly makes his wife agree and she once again believes him. On the other hand, we see that the detective is after Katie. The detective comes to know that his bill had been paid by someone else and that someone else is Katie too. The detective comes to Katie and threatens him to leave the city. They argue with each other and Katie refuses to leave the city. The next day when Sam's wife is taking the letters out of the mailbox, Katie comes there and hands her over her dog's collar. He tells her that Sam killed her dog because she was too obsessed with it. He tells her that he is Katie and furthermore mentions that both of them are being betrayed by the same person. Sam's daughter comes there and she is taken back by her mother. On the same night, she receives a call from Katie who talks to her like her drama teacher. He tells her to meet at the auditorium where the next day she goes. She meets Katie and realizes that it was not a drama teacher. Katie tells her the truth and she asks him why he killed their dog where Katie refuses the allegation of the dog's murder. He tells her that she was locked in the basement by her mother after she found drugs in her bag and his father cancelled her driving license. She believes him as she is still young. He asks her for a hug and further kisses her forcefully. She's just 15 years old and that is the reason why she doesn't understand anything. She comes home and her father receives a call that tells her that her daughter was caught with drugs once again. He comes to her and talks to her about how the drugs got into her bag as he suspects that this time she didn't buy herself, but Katie must have put them. He comes to know that Katie also touched her daughter. This makes him angry and he gets furious with her daughter. He afterward realizes that he had done something very wrong because of which he asks for forgiveness from her. He meets the detective who reminds him that he suggested that Sam should hire some people who would threaten and beat Katie. Sam never listened to him and he believed they could go the other way around. He rejected the idea back then, but now he agrees to that. We see that some people come to Katie and they start to hit Katie. Katie has not been wasting his time in jail, but trained himself as we saw at the start of the movie. Sam is watching the whole scene hiding near him. He takes away the weapon and hits the men who came after him. Katie comes to know that Sam is watching and he calls his name out, but Sam does not respond. Katie leaves the place after that and his plan fails completely. Sam had filed a case against him and for that reason, he calls the best criminal lawyer to hire him for the case, but he comes to know that Katie had already hired him. Katie was always 2 steps ahead of him. In the next scene, we are shown Katie in the court where he tells the judge that he was threatened by Sam. At the restaurant earlier in the movie, Sam threatened Katie and he recorded it. He tries to give his explanation to the judge, but he doesn't listen. He tells Sam that a case is on him now because he threatened Katie. The case on Katie has been considered false and it was dismissed by the judge. The judge not only dismisses the case, but also cancels his license. Sam gets frustrated at a high point after that. He goes to the detective who tells him that they have the last option left, which is that Sam can shoot Katie after luring him into his house. He tells him that he has to go out of the city because of that. Agreeing to the idea, the next day, he goes to the airport with his family. Katie follows him to the airport where he says goodbye to his family and now Katie reaches the receptionist. He asks the receptionist where Katie went to which she refuses to leak the information. Katie persuades her and tells her that he was Sam's client. He also mentions that it was really important. She tells him that he went out of the city on a 3-day trip. We see that Sam's family comes home and Sam is also hiding in the car. He comes home and the detective is already there waiting for him. They stay in position with a gun pointed towards the door. They get confused why Katie didn't come. They could kill him and tell the court that they killed him in self-defense. They cannot kill Katie because he never came and now they are afraid. The next day we can see that the detective is still sitting and waiting for the chance. Katie is shown afterward who has killed their housekeeper and wore her clothes. He goes where the detective is. With the piano wire, he tries to slice his neck, but the detective tries to kill him with his gun. Katie also came prepared to carry a gun himself and he shoots the detective with a gun, leaving the place as soon as possible. Sam, his wife, and his daughter come down who see that Katie had killed their housekeeper and the detective. Sam tries to go after him with a gun, but his wife stops him. The next day he goes for the Cape Fear where he has a houseboat for him and his family. They still don't know that Katie is hanging down in their car. Sam takes the boat and takes them away. Katie is still after him, so he hires another boat to chase them. At night when he is having dinner with his family, a storm comes and the boat starts to levitate. Sam goes outside to see what is happening and Katie strangles him. Sam passes out there and Katie comes inside after tying him up. He comes inside and locks the little girl in the locker where she luckily finds a flammable chemical. He locks the wife with the handcuffs and brings Sam in. Sam tells him not to hurt his family because his revenge was with Sam. Katie obviously doesn't listen to him and hits him multiple times. Katie now sits at the shelf, where he lights a cigar. Seeing the opportunity, she throws the liquid on his face. Katie's face starts to burn, and he jumps out of the boat in order to save his face. The storm gets more fierce, and now their boat is moving more. Sam goes to the dashboard to save the boat, and we see that Katie has survived. He climbs up to the boat with a rope once again and takes Sam to gunpoint. His face has been burned by his daughter, and now he looks very frightening. He asks him whether he knew that the girl had sexual relationships with other men as well. At first, he denies the fact, and secondly, if she had those relationships, it never gave Katie any right to rape her. He says that he could have been freed on that basis because he comes to know that Sam knew about the girl. He hit Sam after that and makes him accept the truth. He orders the women to remove clothes after that and take Sam out in order to handcuff him, but the boat levitates once again and Sam falls away from Katie. Sam sees the opportunity and tells his daughter and wife to jump from the boat. They jump from the boat, but when he is about to jump himself, Katie grabs him. The boat hits a tree once again, and now they get separated once again. Katie grabs his gun and starts to look for Sam. Sam cuffs him with the boat, and now he cannot escape from the boat he has been chasing until then. The boat afterward hits a rock and is destroyed completely when Katie is in the boat, but Sam leaves and goes to the shore to his family. Katie starts to make weird sounds and yells at them in gibberish language. The boat is going down and it takes Katie with it. Sam finally saves his family from a monster who has been after them finally. The movie ends here.